During my wedding rehearsal dinner, my brother raised his glass and declared, "She's marrying him because she cannot find anyone superior, even she admits it." Laughter erupted. I merely sat, smiling. Yesterday, I uploaded the video he wished forgotten. Today, he's truly eluding everyone. The night before my wedding was meant to be one of the most joyous evenings of my life. Instead, it was the rehearsal dinner, a small gathering of close family and friends on the back patio of a charming restaurant. My fiancé had chosen the venue with care. Twinkling lights hung overhead, gentle music set the mood, and an anticipatory calm lingered in the air just before the big day. It was a scene you'd want to treasure forever, and I will, but not for the reasons you might expect. I remember sitting quietly, holding my fiancé's hand beneath the table, a mix of nerves, excitement, and gratitude filling me as toasts began. First, her sister stood up, delivering a toast that was funny, tender, and a bit emotional. Then, my best friend recounted a few mortifying college stories before ending with a sincere blessing. Next, my dad rose with a proud smile, raising his glass, and I couldn't stop grinning. Then, my brother stood. I still recall the clear clink of his glass, as if struck by a fork, silencing the patio. With his familiar mischievous smile, the one that always heralded a punchline, he began in a casual tone. "I just want to say a few words about my younger brother," he said. "Growing up, we always wondered what kind of woman would settle for someone like him." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. My fiancé stiffened beside me. Undeterred, he continued, "We're just grateful he found someone before he hit 40. Some of us feared he'd end up marrying a dating app algorithm. So, let's all toast to the man who finally convinced someone to say yes." This time, the laughter was louder, and I felt as if the table might have vanished beneath me. He sat back as if nothing had happened, while I forced a smile and gripped my wine glass until my knuckles turned white. That night, when we finally returned home, my fiancée asked if I was all right. I reassured her that I was fine, though deep inside, something had shifted. It wasn't the first time my brother had overstepped boundaries like that. However, this public humiliation was the breaking point. I silently vowed that I wouldn't allow him to continue unchecked. A year ago, I had accidentally received a voice memo from him, a file I had saved but never listened to. I assumed it was trivial until that very night, when after my fiancé had fallen asleep, I listened in the dark. His voice came through, taunting and boastful. "She's attractive, but don't be fooled. I'm not marrying her out of love. She's merely a pretty face with a fat bank account. I'll stick around until I get what I want, then who knows?" I sat alone, the reality of his words sinking in as I listened to him mock the woman he was meant to marry in just 2 months. I saved the recording, backed it up in the cloud, uncertain of how I'd use it, but I knew one thing for certain: he had chosen the wrong day, wrong place, and wrong person to try and humiliate me. The next morning, I woke early while my fiancé still slept soundly beside me. I quietly slipped out, made a cup of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table, my phone displaying that very same voice memo. I listened again through headphones, each word slicing through me. It wasn't solely the cruelty of his words, it was the arrogance, the self-satisfaction, the air of invincibility. My brother had always been the charming, funny one, the one everyone instinctively trusted. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, reliable one, always overlooked while he flouted rules and reaped the benefits. I had followed the rules, kept my head down, and worked hard, only to be ridiculed. I believed that growing up and getting engaged to an amazing woman would finally earn me respect. Yet there I was at the rehearsal dinner, being the punchline in front of everyone I cared about, a bitter reminder that some people never outgrow old habits. That night, sleep eluded me as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while a storm of anger, embarrassment, resentment, and a newfound determination swirled inside me. By sunrise, I had devised a plan. First, I copied the recording onto a USB drive. Then, I jotted down a list of names: his fiancée, her father, some extended family members, even his boss. I wasn't sure who should hear it, but I needed options. I wasn't going to let rage dictate my actions. Instead, I resolved to be smart, measured, and precise. At breakfast, my fiancée noticed my distraction and asked if I was all right. I merely nodded, though she pressed. You know you don't have to pretend, right? That wasn't okay. I managed a small smile and admitted I was still processing the events of the night. She reached for my hand, reassuring me that I didn't deserve to endure such treatment. Later that day, we left for the venue to finish setting up. Naturally, my brother arrived late, acting as if nothing had occurred. He winked at me from across the room, as if it were all just harmless fun. I returned his smile, yet something in my eyes betrayed me. For the first time in a long time, he looked uncertain. That evening, I sat down and drafted a letter addressed to his fiancée. I never sent it immediately, but I needed the words prepared. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you deserve to know the truth about a man who disrespects you. I then copied the audio file onto another drive and sealed it in an envelope. That was the moment I realized this wasn't solely about retribution. It was about drawing a line, refusing to let someone like him continue to hurt others unchecked. On the day of the wedding, my nerves were high, but so was my focus. I stood at the altar, hand in hand with my radiant bride, scanning the crowd. In the second row, my brother sat smiling as though nothing were amiss, but I knew, and soon everyone else would too. The ceremony proceeded flawlessly. From the outside, it was a perfect wedding. My bride glowed, our vows were heartfelt, and the guests applauded at every turn. My brother refrained from any further speeches, offering only smiles and nods for the photos, acting like the previous night had been nothing more than a minor mishap. After the reception, once the final guest had left, and my wife was asleep in our hotel suite, I sat on the edge of the bed with the envelope still nestled in my jacket pocket. The USB drive inside, although light, felt as if it weighed a ton. I turned it over repeatedly in my hand, replaying his drunken, slurred confession on my phone. His tone was smug, his laughter mocking. She's just a pretty face on paper. Once her father signs over that property, I'm out. In the background, there was laughter, perhaps from a friend, maybe even a cousin, the one who always sided with him. I listened again, not to verify, but to relive the sting, the anger, the sick twist in my stomach, the resolve that followed years of being the bigger person while he always stole the spotlight. But this wasn't a juvenile prank or a drunken birthday rant. It was calculated betrayal, and it wasn't solely about me. It was about her, his fiancée. I couldn't stand by while she built a life with someone so callous. So, the following morning, I texted my brother. Brunch is still on at Mom and Dad's. Be there at 11, and bring the wife. She's part of the circus now. His reply, punctuated by his usual winking face and joking tone, failed to mask the underlying tension. My wife noticed my silence on the way to the venue. I told her I was simply exhausted from the previous day. She squeezed my hand, saying, "You made it through, now comes the easy part." I hoped she was right. We pulled into my parents' driveway just as my brother and his fiancée stepped out of their car. She looked as beautiful as ever, fresh-faced, excited, in a soft floral dress, and greeted me with a warm smile. Inside the house, the chatter mingled with the aroma of bacon. My mom had laid out a spread resembling a magazine brunch, tatos muffins, fruit trays, and mimosas. Everyone was still buoyant from the wedding festivities. Meanwhile, my brother reigned in the kitchen on his second mimosa, recounting tales from the previous night. Catching my eye, he winked and raised his glass. I nodded, and he clapped me on the shoulder, saying, "Come on, let's toast to the newlyweds." "You did it, man. Didn't think you had it in you." Cousins chuckled, and I noticed my aunt and her husband exchanging amused glances, assuming it was all in good humor. But this time, I didn't laugh. Instead, I looked him directly in the eye and remarked, "We all grow up eventually, though some of us faster than others." His smile faltered slightly as he replied, "Easy, bro, don't get soft on me now." The moment passed, the noise of conversation resumed, but I sensed a crack in his facade, a subtle shift in his confidence. Later, when most guests had either drifted into the backyard or returned for seconds, I pulled his fiancée aside. "Can we talk for a moment?" She looked startled but nodded. We stepped into the sunroom off the kitchen, where the door muted the sounds from the rest of the house. In that near silence, my throat felt parched as I began. There's something you need to hear. I held out the USB drive. She frowned, asking, "What is this?" I hadn't intended to involve her, but I insisted. "I think you deserve to know what kind of man you're about to marry." She glanced between the drive and me, her face troubled, and I added, "I won't say what you do with it, but at least you'll be making your choice armed with the truth." I handed her an envelope containing the letter. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. Softly, I continued, "I don't wish to ruin anything, but I refuse to let him keep deceiving you." After a long silence, she pressed her lips together, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Thank you." Soon after we left. My brother tried to pull me aside before we departed, but I told him I was too tired and that we'd catch up later. His fiancée said little, yet the next day she didn't return to their apartment. The day after, my brother called me 6 times. I let his messages go unanswered. His final text read, "What did you do?" I left him to stew in uncertainty. For once, he wasn't in control of the narrative, and I no longer felt like the silent one. 2 days later, I received a brief but direct message from her. "Thank you for telling me. I've left. I'm with my sister now. I don't know what's next, but I needed to escape." I stared at those words for a long while before replying, "I'm sorry it had to be this way. You didn't deserve what he did." She didn't reply, and I wasn't surprised. Yet I felt a weight lift, realizing that I hadn't just shielded myself, but also saved her from a lifetime of lies. However, this wasn't the conclusion. I began to reflect on all the others he had manipulated, the ex-girlfriends he deceived, the colleagues he betrayed, the minor slights that no one ever confronted. He wasn't merely my brother, he embodied a pattern. And I now possessed the one thing that might finally shatter it, the truth. For 3 days I maintained silence. My brother bombarded me with calls, texts, even messages through family, but I held my ground. I let him stew in the uncertainty, stripped of the power he once wielded. He left angry voicemails, defensive texts, and pleas claiming, "It's not what it looks like," or, "You're overreacting, I was drunk, it was a joke." None of his messages held regret, only fear, fear of exposure, fear that his charm had finally eroded. On the 4th day, my cousin messaged, "Dude, what the hell happened? Are you really going nuclear?" I didn't answer. I wasn't acting impulsively. Instead, I spent those 3 days methodically gathering evidence. Timelines, backup files, screenshots of texts in which he begged favors, lied to avoid commitments, and bad-mouthed friends. I even reached out cautiously to one of his ex-girlfriends, a woman he'd ghosted after a 2-year relationship, and she confirmed that she had felt manipulated by him, all too often. I told her I was documenting a pattern, and she agreed to talk further. I wasn't planning to post anything online or make this public, but I knew he had to be confronted with the harm he'd caused. My brother had once shown real potential. He was smart, charming, quick-witted, but he never put in the hard work or looked within himself, and now his failure was catching up. On the 5th day, I finally picked up the phone. His voice answered instantly. "Jesus, what the hell is going on? What did you say to her?" I replied calmly. "I didn't say anything to her. I let you speak for yourself. You just didn't know I was recording." There was silence before he snapped. "You had no right to humiliate me in front of our family, to treat your fiancée like a pawn, to act as if people are disposable." He let out a bitter laugh and continued. "So, you think you're some kind of hero now?" I answered simply. "No, just someone who finally stopped letting you write the story." He hung up abruptly, and I didn't return his call. The narrative was already shifting, and I wasn't interested in his version anymore. In the ensuing week, the repercussions spread faster than I expected. It started as hushed family gossip, raised eyebrows at brunches I wasn't even invited to, then escalated to phone calls from cousins demanding the full story. I only shared enough to say that she made the right decision. Later, the ex-girlfriend I had spoken with messaged me again, and soon a second, and then a third, reached out on their own. Each recounted tales of lies, gaslighting, and betrayal, they all shared the same thread. He always made them feel complicit in his failures. I began compiling these stories, not sure if it was for documentation, for his future partner's sake, or simply to see the pattern laid out clearly. It was proof that I wasn't imagining things, that this wasn't just petty revenge, but a necessary stand against a lifetime of being treated as invisible. One evening, I received a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. The caller was our old high school history teacher. "Hey, this is Mr. Delaney. I'm not sure what's going on between you and your brother, but he called me last night, drunk, yelling, and I think he's spiraling. I just thought you should know." I sat with that message for a long time. It would have been easy to feel guilty and call him back to offer comfort, to be the peacemaker as I always had been, but that guilt wasn't mine to bear anymore. The next morning, I visited my parents. We hadn't spoken much since the wedding, and they had sensed the tension, though I hadn't revealed the full truth. As my mom opened the door with a tentative smile that quickly faded, we heard her murmur, "Did you hear about the recording?" In a hushed tone, my dad questioned, "How long have you had this?" I replied, "A year." My mom's eyes filled with sorrow as she asked, "Why would he say something so cruel?" My dad explained, "Because he sees people as tools, he always has." For once, our parents didn't defend him. That night, as my dad called me again, he apologized for not seeing it sooner, for not listening. I simply said, "He needs help, but he has to want it. Right now, he doesn't." I wasn't sure if he ever would change. 3 weeks passed since that fateful night. My wife and I slipped back into our routine quicker than I expected. She remained my steadfast rock, never demanding updates or answers, just giving me space to breathe and process. Some nights we sat in reflective silence. Other nights, we talked for hours. She never once told me to let it go. She understood that healing sometimes requires confronting the painful truth. Since that time, my brother has not called. He's vanished from group chats and family gatherings, with word that he's been staying with a friend across town. Our parents once tried to visit him, but he didn't answer the door. I confess, a part of me still waits for a confrontation or an apology, a final confrontation that might close the chapter, but so far, only silence remains. In that quiet, something new has started to grow. I've reconnected with people I'd pushed aside over the years, co-workers I'd always avoided after work drinks, old friends I'd lost touch with. I even started therapy, a step I never imagined taking, and through each session, I began peeling back layers of long-held habits, the compulsion to keep peace, the fear of speaking up, the belief that my worth depended on my tolerance. Gradually, I recognized these patterns not just in my relationship with my brother, but in every facet of my life. Last week, I received a brief email from his ex-fiancée. It simply read, "Thank you again. I'm doing better. I moved out of state to be near my sister, started a new job. I hope you're okay too. What you did, it mattered." I stared at those words, realizing that they weren't just a thanks for stopping something toxic, but an affirmation that breaking the silence had real value. Even though she didn't owe me that message, I was grateful she sent it. Sometimes, I think about how different her life might have been if I had never spoken up, if she had gone through with a wedding built on lies. That thought haunts me more than anything. Even our parents have changed. They are quieter now, less inclined to make excuses when his name comes up. They still love him, I know, but perhaps for the first time, they're starting to see him as he truly is. One day, my dad even asked me to help with some house repairs, a job he'd typically reserved for my brother. As we fixed the porch light together, he said quietly, "I'm proud of the man you've become." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until it happened. I also began journaling, as my therapist had suggested. At first, it felt awkward to write in a diary. What was I going to record? "Dear diary, today I almost told my boss to go to hell?" But soon, the pages filled with anger, grief, and long-forgotten memories. The time in high school when my brother blamed me for his misdeed, the moment he joked at my expense during a job interview that cost me a position I'd worked so hard for. These recollections, once isolated, revealed a broader pattern. Writing them down allowed me to finally see the truth and believe in it. I realized that things would never go back to what I once knew, and maybe that was for the best. Perhaps normal was broken, and now, for the first time, I could build something better, something honest, something mine. I've begun setting boundaries in every area of my life, saying no when necessary, speaking up when I feel disrespected, even when it's uncomfortable. Each time I do, I feel a little lighter, a little stronger. Just last Sunday, my mom invited my wife and me over for dinner, just the four of us. No mention of my brother. We shared a meal of roasted chicken, sipped wine, and discussed everyday matters like new grocery stores, the weather, and television shows. Underneath it all, there was a quiet acknowledgement that things had changed. At one point, my mom confessed, "I wish he'd come home, but I understand why he hasn't." I couldn't bring myself to respond. I was too focused on the present. As we walked to our car that night, my dad looked at me and said, "It takes guts to do what you did." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Some days I still wrestle with mixed emotions. A part of me mourns the relationship I wished my brother and I could have shared, a sacred bond some speak of. But I've learned that sometimes you must let go of the idealized version of someone and accept them as they are. It hurts, but there is freedom in that honesty. This week, I framed a photograph from the wedding, a candid shot of my wife and me laughing, arms wrapped around each other, while everyone clapped in the background. It's slightly blurry and off-center, but it's real. I placed it on my desk at home, not because it's perfect, but because it reminds me of the moment I chose myself, the moment I stopped being silent and began living out loud.